Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel. This is a place for narrative and having fun around that. Tonight's Thursday night, which means the Varietal Show is happening, and what the Varietal Show is a sort of live ride-along. However, if you also like just being told stories, then on Tuesday nights we do Fireside Fairy Tales, where I read old folklore and fairy tales from as original sources as I can get, and we have fun there. If you are watching this live, then you should join in the chat, because this is meant to be an interactive piece where we play a solo tabletop RPG of some sort. We use prompts on it, and then I write stuff, but I also get prompts and ideas from the audience. You guys are all a part of it. If you're not watching it live, though, you do have the distinct benefit of being able to go down into the description and click on the various timestamps that exist to jump ahead in the stream to whatever section interests you the most, including if you just want to hear where we read back what we wrote at the end. Though I will say, if you are here live, you're going to have the fun, because I have my little crop of potatoes out here in my chat, and I see that they've already been busy chatting it up. Witchery in there with a very cute little emoji. Hello, Witchery. Thank you for watching. Ghosh is here. Good to see you, Ghosh. Happy Pi Day. Yeah. Although I think people on a different date order standard might be a little confused, but in North America it is 0314, March 14th. Tammy says, hope Rory's voice is better. So do I. Her puppy Shizuka is feeling a lot better. Had me scared. That's good. Uncle Kitty is here. Hello, Uncle Kitty. It's good to see you. Hello, GS. Thank you for watching. Oh, Tammy says, Rory, your name is pronounced Shizuka. Yeah, I do know that. I don't know if I pronounced it differently or it sounded differently on Tuesday when you mentioned it, but I am... I know it means like gentle in Japanese. I know a decent amount of Japanese. Not enough to really hold a conversation, but enough to know that. Who else have we got here? Zombie Wolf is here. Hello, Zombie Wolf. Hope you have some fun fact cooking in your head there. And Ghosh says, let's go! Indeed, let's do. Although I see Jump Store here. Hello, Jump Store. Zombie Wolf says, I'm not a fan of pie. I am. Are you a cake or a pie person? That's the great debate. For me, it was always pie. I like pastry. This part of the show is called Lit Games. It is the show, really. It's where we write. I write. Well, you guys prompt ideas or interpret some of the prompts we get out of our games. And it's basically where we play a game. In this case of tonight, we are playing a game called The Floating Bookshop, which we've actually played before, but I'll explain why I'm playing it again. The short answer is I really liked it, but the long answer is there was a bunch of mechanics that we didn't get to. And let me show you what that looks like. Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop, A Year Upon a River. It doesn't actually require you to be a fox. We chose to be a fox when we played last time, and I'm going to use the same character here. But what we're going to do is, this is a solo tabletop RPG. So the idea is that you sort of build out a character, you put them in this world that this book defines somewhat. You roll on various rolling charts. Based on the prompts that we get, we sort of write you can write journal entries. I mean, it's kind of designed for that, to be journal entries from the point of view of your character. I tend to do third person limited point of view of the character, just because that's where I tend to enjoy writing the most. But yes. Witchery says, most pies here are savory. I'll take either. Zombie Wolf says, I never understood when people turn sweets into savory dishes, like savory crepes and pancakes. A lot of those started savory, to be honest. The sweets were kind of a later history of food thing. Sugar and such was a harder thing to come by than meat. Anyways, Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop, A Year Upon a River. What we're going to do is we're going to pick up with our character, who I will reintroduce us to. who was Looper Lou Canid III. I don't remember why we gave them such a long name. He is a red fox, but he is gray-furred. He's an older fox. He's easily overwhelmed. He found this bookshop, which again is a houseboat with a bookshop in it. It was moored to a wharf. There seemed to be no one inside, but there were books, and he took up a job as a bookseller. This was one of the prompts from the book that we chose. Before this, he was a traveler. He wandered the land doing odd jobs, but now he's sort of settling down into this boat. There's a couple of other details here, like books are like his friends. He was born under what's called a blooming moon. You pick what moon he was born under to give him personality traits. In this case, he's kind of introverted and a bit shy. He has a pair of large glasses that always seem to have smudges on them, a cropped ear that we've never defined why, and a gold slightly dented pocket watch. The bookshop's quirks are that it slants slightly to the left and the front door jams in the cold weather, but we're not going to be really in cold weather, which is the point of this playthrough, is to be in the thaw. There's a couple of items that might come up here. I'm not going to go through all of it. If you are really curious about a more in-depth description of the character, feel free. You don't really have to. We're not going to do anything too connected to it, but feel free to watch the first stream we did of this, which is just... I don't remember what it's called, but the icon is the cover of this book. So it'd be easy enough to find. And these are just page counts for me, so I can jump between stuff really easily. But what we do need to remember is that this tabletop RPG has its own definitions of seasons. And when we first played it, we played it in what was called Brisk. Brisk was their winter. We sort of played it around Christmas. The boat was sort of frozen in and couldn't move, and we did a little winter thing of people buying last-minute gifts. What I want to take us through today, though, is what's called Bloom, which is the name of their season of spring, sort of. They have 5 seasons, not 4, so it's not in a direct spring, but it is like spring. It is the time, Bloom is the time when stuff blooms, and when the river thaws and we can move again. And there's an event that kicks off Bloom called the Rinse, which I will talk about in a minute. And basically what I want us to do is to try out some of the travel and fishing mechanics in this game. Yes, it has fishing mechanics. Travel downstream. I want us in chat to pick a place to go. We'll draw some prompts around it, and we'll just write a little bit about the thawing of the river. Witchery says the history of desserts is you wouldn't think that was a dessert if we made it now. Very, very, very true. There wasn't even that much distinction like this sweet and savory thing. There was a lot more mixing of sweet and savory. Jumpstore says, what happens in the 5th season? The 5th season is winter. The season that probably doesn't have the most direct analogy, although if you live where I live, it does, is the burning season, where stuff catches on fire. There's forest fires. Okay. So, I'm going to show you guys a map. Just getting up to here. And we'll decide where we want to go. And then I'll read a little blurb that we've gone so far. So if you guys are here to sort of participate in the game, you'll need to pay attention to this map for just a second. I must insist. This is a map of the world of the game. You see how there's a river that runs down the center of it, and there's little places with names you probably can't read, but I will read them aloud. Right now we're at Thistledown, which is a town that has its own descriptions and so on. But we're not going to stay at Thistledown, so that doesn't matter. The next village up the river is Rewberry. Then there's one called Roost, Hurst, Mersey, Kiawake, Enark, and Arborea, Plenty, Port IMCS. I can't remember if that's another name. There's the Light Keep, and then there's the Rivermouth. What I want to know is where Do you want to take our little old fox on his boat? His floating bookstore. Where do you want him to go? And based on where you want him to go, I will do different things. But that's the question we must settle now. We are currently at Thistledown, Ruberry, Roost, Mersey, Hurst, Kiowaka, Eneric, Arborea, Plenty, or Port IMS, RIMCS. And the further down we go, the longer it takes, so the more things that might get in our way between that. Jumpstore says, yeah, we definitely have that season. It's called Summer, and I still have PTSD flashbacks to the forest fires in Washington 2015. I remember that being just above Washington here, but we've actually had forest fires pretty much every year in increasingly worse ways since 2015. Last year was bad. I don't think it was the worst we've had, but I think the year before that was the worst. Does the fox have a name? A Lupercalia Canid III. We call him Lou. Where do we want to go, guys? It's a game about going on a journey down a river. And once we make that decision, then I can start walking through things, which involves drawing cards and so on. Also, if you guys want to try this game, I really do recommend it. It's one of the better ones. Roost. Got to vote for Roost. Gonna shuffle these cards a bit. Off camera, because I'm bad at it. So these are actually days apart. So unfortunately, we can't go to two locations probably in this stream, despite how close they look. Yeah. We got 2 votes for Roost. If we have enough time, I'll try to get us to Mersey. Mersey is interesting. I have read a little bit about these ahead of time. I think Roost is an interesting one. The reason I'm not telling you folks about what's at these places is because I think that's adds to the exploration. And I think if you do play this game on your own, don't look at it ahead of time. Okay. Roost seems to be the vote. Now, Roost is 3 days away. Okay. So we will keep that in mind. I may have to sort of play fast and loose with that. All right. Let me just make a note of that so I don't forget. Okay. So let me read the little intro text I did here. It is picking up from the stuff that we did last stream, but again, if you didn't watch that stream or don't remember it, it's not super important. It's not that connected of a tale. I'm calling this rinsing off in the thaw. Looper looked on through the steam of his morning tea to the young crew of rats that were sawing holes into the softening ice. It was truly the thaw of bloom now, a transition between the still of brisk to the thick smoke of burn. Looper was undecided if he would partake in the ceremonies for which the young rats were preparing. The rinse was a baptism of sorts, where the water takes from you your regrets and mistakes. In theory, it was a lovely ceremony, but in practice, Lou was an old fox with joints that ached even in a brisk wind, let alone the slush of a thawing river. So Lou was pondering over his cup of black tea whether the memories were worth the momentary misery of novel things. Either way, whether from the shore or in the slush, Lou would join the rinse celebrations. He had enjoyed his time here in Thistledown, but he was ready to leave the town awash in his wake and head down the river to sell books at Roost, a town he'd only heard of but never visited. One that apparently if I'm remembering correctly, I may have to correct this, but I think this is the one, disappears at points in the year. Not apparently, reportedly. Jumpstore says, takes away your regrets and mistakes, so it's alcohol. No, actually, it's a pretty cool little thing. I will read you how the rinse works. Let me get you to that page, and we will do... I'm really trying my best not to get bogged down into scenes this time and really focus a bit more. I'm going to lower this just slightly. And try to move us on a little bit. I kind of want to capture this, a little more paraphrasing of this journey, this multi-day journey down, rather than really sort of focused in conversations. Because I tend to do that a lot in my own writing off the stream and in this, and I feel like not every scene needs all the detail I want to give it. But we'll see. We'll see if I just have to give up on that. I think it's 76. This is the calendar for the season of bloom, which we're in, but and it gives us some things that happened in that season. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Show me, it's a little further down. Rinse. So let me read you about the Festival of Rinse. And then you guys can think about what is worth including in our little paragraph about it before Lou takes off. The opening line, which is quite... A lot of the writing in this book is very beautiful, by the way. It matches up with its wonderful art. The river has seen a lot of terrible secrets, but today our job is not to judge, merely to carry it away. Rinse happens on the first day of bloom, and it happens all along the river. The new year has come again, and with it the softening of the snow and the ice that traps the river. It is a fresh start and a chance for change. It is a tradition for animals to take a swim in the river, to rinse off the last year and cleanse themselves for the coming year. The river has only just begun to thaw, and holes must be drilled into the ice in order to reach the water. It is a teeth-chattering, paw-numbing experience. After the swim, fires lit on the riverbank are blazing and hot. Spicy drinks are passed around. Animals huddle together and share their dreams. And then I'm going to add some things here that can happen, that don't have to happen. We won't have them all happen at the rinse. Someone hands you a hot drink after a swim. Unbeknownst to you, the animal who passed you the drink, and the animal who passed you the drink. This will be the start of a long friendship. Who is the animal who gives you the drink? Number 2, a townsfolk hands you a pot and a seed. I thought this was cool. They tell you that some animal folk like to commemorate each rinse by planting a seed and watering it with the water they swam in. The seed takes the bad things you've rinsed off and turns it into energy to grow the strong. If the plant doesn't grow, it's a sign that the rinse didn't work. Do you plant the seed? And then the last one is about the young ones playing a game. I just wanted to read that because I thought that was a very folksy event, kind of tradition thing that was very charming. Okay. So now, hopefully you have a bit of a sense of bloom, what the season is, and where we're starting the first day at rinse. You guys can let your imaginations run for a couple of minutes here because I need to draw some cards and talk a little bit about the game here. So we have 2 orders of play. You can do a book selling order of play, but we're not going to be selling books on this stream because we did that the last stream. So we are going to be doing, I guess, our days off order of play. But we're really going to do travel, which is sort of done the same way. But either way, in all forms of play, your setup requires you to draw 2 cards, which I'm going to do now. And then we read from the weather table for that season, drawing additional cards as required, and check the calendar to see if today is a holiday or for additional information. In this case, we're going to participate in a celebration, so we will be using that prompt. Okay, I got a 6 of diamonds and a 6 of hearts. So what that means then is we have to go back to the bloom. You can see why I tagged these pages. And look at the weather tables. Okay. So they are both 6s. Which means showers off and on, sunny. We're not going to use the customer forecast because we're not using that right at the moment. And the duration is in the afternoon. And so when it's not all day, you draw another card to figure out what the weather is for the rest of the day. In this case, it's a 2 of clubs, which is just a 2. Warm with a light breeze, pollen drifts in the air, and that's in the morning. So we've successfully done this. It starts with a slightly warm day. I'm going to say warmer because the river's still a bit frozen. And then it will turn to some off and on showers, but with sun in between. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, you know, it's not really the end of the world. Today, however, was the Rinse Festival in... What's the name of this town? Thistledown. A swim in slushy water, followed up by an evening at the fire with warm drinks and a community of friends and strangers. Well, friends. So I want you guys, if you can, if this is your vibe, to sort of imagine yourself as this little old fox walking around. And one thing we have to decide is whether he's going to go in the water or not. I want you to also sort of just think about the details that you see in your mind's eye as you walk around this little, you know, half-frozen grove along a river, somewhat wild. If it helps any, Thistledown is a largely academic town. Okay. Lou was enjoying the return of warmer, oh, good timing on the song, of warmer breezes that morning. But off over the verdant canopy, he could see gray clouds stretching closer. The afternoon would bring some showers, he figured. But the morning was a swirl of chilly river mist and warming spring air off the distant ocean. GS says a pavilion for gathering and music performances or storytelling. Good idea. Now, these are little animals. They are basically human in their nature, but can you think of anything that would be special about how they made it being not human? Uncle Kitty says we've got storms closing in. If I disappear, the power went off, and I'll be back as soon as I can. No problem, Uncle Kitty. Where I live, just if someone sneezes too hard, the power goes out. So you have my sympathy. Ayo! Mr. Kalia. You going to take a dip with the rest of us? Asked the young rat. Mitchell. Lou. Mitchell was his name. Or maybe it wasn't. Lou. Was never too confident in his ability to recall names. Ooh, maybe they wove it out of willow and vines and like, yeah, like it's living. Oh, that's great. Witchery says, I think it's willow. Whatever, it's willow now. Oh, I don't... Whoops. Don't know about that. Son. Lou said with a smile to cover his mumbling. I'm a bit old for the shock of the cold. My ma says you're only as old as you think you are, Mr. Kalia. Is that my neighbors? I don't know if you guys can hear that. It's a weird squawking noise. Tammy says, ancient Roman bathhouse as a place. Ooh, that would be cool. I don't know what they're doing over there. Yelling at each other and moving furniture, I guess. I hope it's not picking up. It's quite loud. My ma says you're only as old as you think you are, Mr. Kalia. Oh, I had a punchline here. Trying to remember what it was. The rat that may be named Mitchell responded. Zombie Wolf says they've never been to a hot spring. We have a fair bit around here because we're on the Ring of Fire, you know, where all the volcanoes are. That we don't get a lot of like volcanic activity, but we are on the fault line for that. So we have a few places with it. I've been in it. It's a hot tub with minerally water. I don't know. It was okay. It was fine, I guess. It didn't really blow me away. The rat that may be named Mitchell responded. Jump Store says they've never been to a public pool because they're a cesspool of germs. Yeah. I mean, that's probably true of a lot of things, to be honest. The rat that may be named Mitchell responded. One thing I should say is that a lot of hot springs that you go into are not like where, like it's sort of filtered in. It's like hot spring water, but it's not, they're not like built on the fault. I imagine there's safety concerns about that. There are places where you can just crawl into the water, but that's a lot less common than places where it sort of gets piped into places. If that makes sense. Like they set up a hotel near it. My mom says you're only as old as you think you are. You should join the festivities. Well, I do think I'm quite old, Lou said with a nervous grin. But I'll consider it. Lou had not intended to consider it. For him, it would be enough to go to the Willow let's call it to the living gazebo where the warm drinks were served and the fires were set. It was a lovely place to sit in any season. But during bloom, that gazebo was transcendent. Uncle Kitty says you're never too old to get drunk and get into shenanigans. Is that what we want to do? Do we want our old little fox to start out kind of isolating in the near the warm fires, but maybe drinking a few too many and being like, let's go? Is that where we want to go with it? That gazebo was transcendent. It was woven of living vines and branches. Mostly a great willow, whose stump formed its center post. During bloom, the thin, winding tendrils that old tree. We're dabbed with soft pink and violet blooms. Violent, violet. Their pollen, their sweet scent was still held in the buds. As the air was too cool to still. The frozen air. Warned them away from blooming. Nonetheless, to sit in that gazebo at the shores of Thistledown, was to see the cross stitch of a bright season peeking through. So that's where Lou found himself by the afternoon. Its dense canopy also kept the afternoon showers mostly off his fuzzy gray head. Did we decide if what Lou's going to be doing? Is he just going to observe and move on, or are we going to have him get drunk and jump in the water? And if so, how does that go? A drop would wiggle through here and there, but compared to those stripping down to nothing and fleeing, no, not fleeing, and sprinting towards the Icy River, he was well comfortable. Who's gonna get him drunk? He's gonna be all boring about it. Give me a character. Like, what kind of animal? What's their angle? Who's gonna liquor up Lou? Zombie Wolf says he has to jump in. It's like Chekhov's gun. That's true. If people don't know, Chekhov's gun, I mean, I think most people know this, but Chekhov's gun is a reference to a script writing thing where if you introduce a gun in the first act, you have to use it in the third act. It's not really a thing. I mean, like most rules in writing, they're all guidelines, but it's not a bad idea. Maybe the chicken really is attracted to a shiny leer. Why not a chicken? Indeed. Jumpstore says, why not Mitchell? I was imagining Mitchell being below drinking age, but he could. Lou meets a chicken named Samuel Jackson. How about I call him Jackson? Chicken is really attracted to a shiny leer. Okay. There. On a spongy seat of moss. Lou sipped the warm cider and watched the young ones screech and laugh as they jumped into the cold water. Okay. You could have done it by accident. Okay. Okay. Just framing these options in my head. Give me a second. Lou was settled in, a little bit buzzed. Mostly happy to watch the goings on. But Mitchell startled him from this trance. He had brought a drink over from the table where a great iridescent rooster named Jackson was spooning out the ciders. One for the kids and one for the adults. Oh, you didn't have to bring me a drink. Jumpstore says, I don't think Rory's going to notice your idea, zombie. Yeah, I did. I did. I'm working on it. I always take some version of your guys' ideas. You didn't have to bring me a drink. You didn't have to bring me a drink. Lou said. I'm not that old. Mitchell took a seat beside him and said, "You said you were old. I know you're not." Lou had not intended to drink more cider, but since it was Mitchell, he knew it could only be the juice for the kids. And juice was always lovely. Mitchell and Lou spent the next 30 to 40 minutes talking and drinking cups of cider. It was somewhere near the end of this conversation when Lou was wondering why the boy hadn't jumped in yet. That Lou learned an important detail. It came to him as he stood, feeling the need for the washroom, and found that the ground was much more unstable than before. One could say he was staggering over it like a younger man returning from a well-supplied feast. Mitchell, Lou finally asked, noticing his tongue was lazy in his mouth. Exactly what kind of cider? Did you drink? I told Jackson to give me one for a kid. That's me. And one for the adult. That's you. Mitchell smiled naively. Oh, Lou said, realizing what he had done. It definitely explained why he found himself better company to the boy than usual. Lou was a fox who, as his mother said, behaved more as a mouse. However, with the right imbibement? Is that a thing? I'm sure 5 people are going to tell me that now. You go right ahead. Tell me if imbibement is a word or a fair use of a suffix. However, with the right imbibement, Lou was known to be almost fun to be around. Still, he didn't want to lose face with the young rat, and so said, well, maybe you should go do some jumping and swimming now, boy. Son. Mitchell? I can't. GS says you are correct, Rory. Oh, good. Feels right. All right. Well, maybe you should go do some jumping and swimming now, boy. Son. Mitchell? I can't. Mitchell said, not correcting Lou on his name, confirming that Lou must have gotten it right. However, Lou could not shake the suspicion the boy was just being nice, and he'd still gotten the name wrong. So much for me paraphrasing. GS says you have an emo strand of hair. I do. Uncle Kitty said there's no bad party so bad that you can't fix it with whiskey and drugs. Or so my cousins tell me. I wouldn't recommend that mix, I will say that much. Okay. Finally, the blurry thoughts of the old fox returned to the words of the pale little rat that wiggled its pink nose in a bit of a sniffle. They have a homemade cannon, like a potato cannon? Or like a cannon? He wondered what the boy meant. He thought he had wondered it to himself, but it turns out he had mumbled it out loud. The boy responded, I am a bit scared. Don't tell anyone. They'll just call me a coward. Then, with unusual bravado Lou began a speech that composed more words than he normally spoke in a day. I remember I had a friend's father tell me that they bought hooch in gas cans in a very distant town in my province. My province is huge, by the way. That's the thing about Canada, it's massive. So the wilderness here is the wilderness. They got drunk off it and woke up in the province next door, which would have taken them probably 12 hours to get to, without their wallets. This is in the 70s, so they wouldn't have had cell phones anyways. And no idea how they got there. Just somewhere in Alberta. I have had my days of partying, but I've never done anything that bad. Then, with unusual bravado, Lou began a speech that composed more words than he normally spoke in a day. My boy, Mitchell. He paused and examined the boy's face. Then continued with a slur. Courage is not a resource for the bold. Courage is the thing you get when you do the thing that you don't have the Lou had to pause and ponder what he was actually trying to say. No one is courageous if they aren't afraid. The difference is you do it. That's courage. He felt good about the phrasing, but he also was feeling good about almost anything by that point. It fires 2-pound lead balls. Well, that'd be a good way to get arrested in Canada. I don't know how the laws are in Ohio. In the bluster of this oddly heroic feeling, Lou unbuttoned his nice wool vest and said, "Come on, boy, we'll do it together." Mitchell's eyes grew wide with shock as he watched the old gray fox run or stumble more so as he dropped his pants mid-stride to toss them aside. Then leapt with a hoot and a dive to one, this is a run-on sentence and I don't care, into one of the carved holes in the ice. The rest of the night was spent trying to shake the shiver that his swim brought to his old bones. Mitchell did follow him, though. Jumpstore says these animals wear clothes. In my world, they do. There's nothing about the book that demands it if you don't want them to wear clothes. Tammy says, my ex-father-in-law had a mini cannon and used to shoot off cans full of sand during parties. Y'all are nuts down there. Does he do the wet doggy shake? Oh, good point. Mitchell did follow him, though. They also managed to spike the punch when they came out and gave their fur a shake. In an ill-chosen place near the gazebo. Jumpstore says, I was imagining more animals of Farthington Wood than Zootopia, I guess you could say. Like I said, whatever world you want to make. When they described, I think maybe the creatures don't wear clothing in the drawings, but it's whatever world you want to make. Okay. We'll do a little bit of traveling, because I want us to reach this new place. The next morning, around dawn, Mitchell and a few others helped the groggy old fellow unmoor his boat and catch the stream towards, what's the name of it? Roost. It would be a few days journey, which means I need to draw some cards and see what the weather was like on the way there. So I'm going to draw 2 cards. And then I need to remember, is it 74? Yes. It's a 3 and a 10. So 3 is sunny and windy, pollen is thick in the air. And then 10 is in the evening. Which means I need to draw one more card for the rest of the day. That's a jack. Is hail. Oh. The first day brought an old remnant. Brought the revenge of, what was the name of it? The Revenge of Brisk, in the form of pelting hail. The rattle of it on his sun window. What is the name? Is it called a sunlight? The window in the roof. Sunroof? Sunroof's a car. Uncle Kitty says, Uncle Kitty rather, says pollen is the enemy. I actually don't have seasonal allergies at this point, but I can definitely remember somebody I used to work with who did, and it would get brutal. What is the name? Skylight. Thank you. My God, I definitely knew that. On the rattle of no, it is fine. On the skylight was a tambourine in the ears of the hungover fox. A reminder that yes, in some ways, age was not just in the mind. Thank you, GS, as well. By the evening, the dark clouds had slipped away, and the winds became warm and thick with sweet pollen. Lou took this opportunity to do some fishing as his boat coasted down the wide river. Okay, which means we can do fishing, which is one of the things I wanted to do. Just gotta remind myself where this page is for fishing. Give me a second. Is it 64? I may just have to do it this way then. Maybe I didn't make a note of the page. Page 70, okay. I've never seen a tabletop RPG actually have a fishing system that wasn't just like rolling a check, and this one does. So I want to show you guys how it works, and then we will use that to prompt a little bit more story. Hopefully we'll end up talking a bit about his first run into Roost. So, here's how it works. You take your deck of cards. I just realized something. Is Mercy a good fishing location? I'll check in a minute. Somebody remind me of that. You take your deck of cards and you deal them out face up. And I have the instructions written on the screen too, if you guys want to follow along. You draw cards and you face up in a line. So the first one is a 2 of hearts, which isn't what we're looking for, until you put down a royal card. So obviously that's like Jack, Queen, King, so on. I think that's all the ones they would count. I don't think aces would count as that, or jokers in this, but I could be wrong. That's the way I'm interpreting it. You might want to interpret that as just Queen and King, but I think that would take too long. So you keep drawing cards. Oh, look at that. I got one. Okay. Each card you draw for this process represents an hour of time passing as you wait, which means in the second hour of fishing, they got a bite. They haven't caught the fish yet, though. You continue drawing cards until you get 2 cards of the same color next to each other. Not the same suit, not the same number, the same color. And that decides whether we caught it or not. So I got a 9 of hearts and a King of hearts. Because I've matched my colors, that completes it. And because they are both red cards, that means we managed to catch the fish. And because this is such a great game, it even has little descriptions of fish in the back end if we want to use that. Or we can use a real fish, because I assume this takes place in our world. If we gotten 2 black cards first in a row, then the fish gets away. So we caught a fish, is what we're saying. Zombie Wolf says that's actually a really clever system. It is. It is only chance, of course, but the point of this game is to give prompts and a sense of, like, you know, passage and interaction with these ideas that are just writing on a page. Okay, so we caught a fish, and we may as well look at the little charts in the back. I actually didn't look at these ahead of time. But you see how there's an appendix here for animals and plants? It tells you when you can catch them and so on. So for example, we could say it's a blue suncatcher. This fish can be found in warm patches of water, and when you catch one, you are reminded of warm memories of the river. We can't catch anything that couldn't be caught either year-round or at least in bloom, which is what we're in. So it could be a red-bellied jewel, because it can be caught year-round. Year-round visitors to the river. These fish are known for their blood-red scales along their bellies. And when you catch one, you reflect on your time on the river. Could be a murrow, a dark-colored, narrow, spiny fish. Murrow are often mistaken for river weed. They sit between the weeds and wait for smaller fish to swim near. When you catch one, you are reminded of a time when you had to hide something, an emotion, an item, a part of yourself, and so on. It could be a river gulper. These fish have long whiskers with shimmery patterns. When you catch one, you think about a customer that had a lasting effect on you, negative or positive. Stream spinner. They like the shade of trees and leap out to grab reed berries or fruit from these branches. They make flashing patterns as the sun reflects off their scales. When you catch one, you're reminded of a time when you felt joyful. Or a water beater. These fish grow big and heavy. They catch insects off the surface, beating their tail against the water. The splashing will often startle lone river striders. I didn't mention this, but there's a whole bunch of slang about different things. River strider is the name of like a person who goes up and down the river, or a creature. When you catch one, you're reminded of a time when you were scared. Ghost says, oh dang, they have seasons too. Yeah, if I didn't make that clear, the first time that we played the game, we played it in Brisk, which was winter. And in this one, we're playing it in Bloom. And if nobody has intonated this yet, I will probably play it for each major season transition. I know we're not technically in spring yet, but this is March is when I think of spring. GS says, I like the shimmery one. Reminded you of a very pale girl customer. Corpse white. Okay. Where's the shimmer? Shimmer. River gulper. These fish have long whiskers and shimmery patterns. Zombie Wolf says, how about a stream spinner? I'd love to see Lou have a wholesome moment. Well, he's probably not done fishing. So maybe what we can do is, I hope I don't lose track of this, because this is my honest intention. I'm going to quickly write about the fish that he caught, and the person it reminded of him. I will try my best not to make it too long. I will draw more weather cards. We'll do the fishing minigame again. And technically there should be one more day of travel after that to get to Roost, but I will just put us in Roost. Have a little description of when we get to Roost. And we'll pause the game, I guess is probably the better way to put it at that point. Okay, so the first day he catches a river gulper. The second day, if he catches something, Zombie Wolf will have him catch the stream spinner. It only took a couple of hours for him to get a snag on his old fishing rod. It was a heavy fish with a lot of fight. It was a heavy fish with a lot of fight. His old Lou's arms were those of a bookseller who mostly lifted tea. So he nearly lost the whole rod to the fight. But he found enough spark to get it onto his deck. It was a great, big, pale river gulper. You could tell by its long whiskers and translucent scales. Its belly reminded him of a... What is the name of the hairless cats? Like, there's a name for them. I'm sorry, I don't know cat breeds that well. I grew up mostly with dogs, although I generally like cats more now, but as a result, I don't have the ins and outs of the cat breeds in my head the way I do with dogs. Sphinx, okay. Rex? I'm getting two notes. I'm gonna check it out. Rex cat. Apparently Rex are short-haired, whereas Sphinx is completely hairless, so I guess we'll go with Sphinx. Oh, Mr. Bigglesworth, yeah. The Dr. Evil cat. reminded him of a Sphinx cat who used to buy his thistleweed bottles to keep her kittens entertained. She wasn't a friendly cat, and her commonly furrowed brow revealed that. But he still remembered her loyalty to her litter fondly. She truly loved her kittens, and he was happy to see his baubles destroyed by them. The second day on the river, Lou started the morning with some reheated gulper from the night's dinner and a bit of tea. Okay, let's check the weather for this day. Again, drawing 2 cards. Cards are a 7 and an 8. Seven, sunny, the water is clear, the customer forecast, busy, I'm not doing customer. Sunny all day and the water is clear. Okay. And I don't have to draw another card because I got the old day prompt. I should say, even this, I even still haven't done all the mechanics. There's mechanics about daily chores and getting people in to repair stuff and whatever. And we'll get to that. I'll do that in the next season when we wrap around this again. There was no winterly vengeance that day. It was as pure a day of bloom as had been seen so far. The sky was an unbroken palette of blue, framed by the chirping canopies over either side of the river. The bugs are finding their foothold on the waterways again. With this warm weather, and that drew up the fish to the surface. So of course, Lou spent the day fishing again. Okay, so again, you draw a card and you place it face up. That's a 7 of spades until you get a face card, a royal card. That's a 9 of diamonds. That's a 10 of spades. That's a 3 of clubs. Oh, he's not having a successful day today. That is a 5 of hearts. I'm running out of space here. An 8 of hearts. A 4 of clubs. When is he going to give up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours he's been fishing. I mean, I guess he's got nothing else going on, right? Sorry, I bumped my camera here. There we go. 8 hours is the 8 of diamonds. Ace, 9 of diamonds. Or sorry, ace of hearts. Finally, in the 10th hour of fishing, they get a queen. Okay. So that is, let me double check my count here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Yeah. 9 hours of fishing. And now we see if he even catches it. So that's a black card. And that's a black card. He slips away. I'll still work in your fish recommendation, though, here. I mean, he can see what it was, at least. And then we will move on to wrapping up, because we are obviously going quite long here. Okay. Lou spent the day fishing again. Despite his optimism in the morning, he spent all morning. He fished through to lunch with nary a bite on his bait. The fish were out. Ghost says, nothing wrong with a late change in profession. Maybe he can dabble in poetry. I've dabbled in poetry, and I am bad at it. Despite his optimism in the morning, he fished through to the lunch with nary a bite on his bait. The fish were out. The fish were out and snapping flies from the river's surface, but none found poor Lou's line appealing. Straight through to dinner was also a bust. And just for sake of pride for pride, Lou fished into the final moments of dusk before getting a bite. His first and only of the day. It was a glittering, it was a stream spinner? Where was it? Oh, there it is. Stream spinner. What is the joyful moment? I realize that we have drifted into mournful topics. And I certainly feel that. I don't think I ever really got over the loss of my pet. And that was a long time ago. But if we have a joy to find in any of those memories, what should it be? Because the stream spinner, even though you're not supposed to use the prompt unless you catch it, I'm going to use it anyways. Or you're reminded of a time where you felt joyful. So what do you think that memory should be, chat? It was a glittering stream spinner. Bright as a jewel. And even the low dusk light. Low evening light? Though it got away. It reminded Lou of drink some water here. How was Lou's relationship with his mom? I think we're all generally positive here. Maybe a happy moment with her on the river? Sure. Reminded Lou of a fine I guess I don't know if I like the implications of a collar, but it would be a collar of a finely decorated collar his mother used to wear everywhere. Even when she first. Zombie Wolf says choker. Yeah, you're right, but also, would that be what a fox calls it? Because with animals, it's just a collar. Reminded Lou of a finely decorated collar. Even when she first taught him how to swim not too far up the river from where he was. GS says necklace. I don't think they would call it a necklace. I guess choker would be the less weird. Witchery says without humans they wouldn't have collars. I think they would just interpret it differently. But if we want to go with choker, we can go with choker. She never explained where it came from. But whenever he asked, She would touch it lightly and smile. It always made Lou warm in his heart to recall his mother's smile. The final day, get the weather, and then we'll take a look at what Roost is, and we'll just sort of introduce it lightly. That's a 5 and a 5. Rain on and off all day. The final day of his journey, of Lou's journey to Roost, was marked by passing showers, which proved enough of a deterrent that he stayed inside and ate biscuits while reading his books. Okay, so Roost. Let's go look at Roost. 164. Roost. A wandering town, Roost lives on the riverbank during bloom, burn, and brink. Where it goes seems to be a secret that only townsfolk know. The town is made up of a collection of tents, all shapes and sizes. So start thinking about what those tents look like as he floats into the from the river to moor his ship. That change every time the town reappears. Only a small number of animal folk are permanent residents of the town. Each night a communal fire is lit at moth light, which is the time at which the moths come out. Again, there's a bunch of slang I haven't really gotten into, but is in this book and explained. And any passing on animal folk are welcome to join, cook over the fire, or simply warm their paws. In the evenings, stories and songs are shared as the town travels so frequently. The townsfolk often bring back news from beyond and the great sea that other river folk have yet to hear. Each time the town returns, many animal folk gather to welcome the townsfolk back and catch up on news. The earthy scent of the communal campfire wafts downriver and is a sign for many that Roost has returned. And it gives you some notable locations like Key's Haunted Tent, Flower Sandwiches, the Tent of Living Stories, the Box with Teeth. And I'm just going to read you through some of the pages that they give on a town because we haven't really encountered that mechanic and I wanted to show them all off. Seasonal changes. The town can be visited during the seasons of bloom, burn, and brink, during brimming, and brisk, the area where the tents would be pitched lies empty. Those are seasons I haven't really talked about. Brimming is sort of fall. The first day, a few days of bloom and brink are the busiest for the town, and that's when we're coming in. So it'd be very busy. And its wharf as animal folk catch up with friends and gossip. Holiday traditions during Weeping Day, which I don't know when that is, but it's not in this game so far. The townsfolk carve their names of the dead and hang them in the weeping trees. The trees in and around the Roost are covered with hanging tokens that tap against each other in the breeze during this time. But that's not going to apply here. And then it even gives us shop. For example, you can buy ice skates for 150 coins. I haven't really done anything about the coins and stuff. There's a whole system for selling books and whatnot that is actually the core of the game. But I've just been very interested in exploring other parts of it. or candles. You can also go to the food tent and get, calming tea blends, chili berries, focus tea blends, broth, hearty stock, things like that. They even give us some characters. Mary is a heron, which is, if you don't know, a very tall and lanky bird that we have up here. It's a mystical, their pronouns are they, them, a mystical animal. Mary speaks in a soft voice. They carry around tarot cards, and enchanted animal folk often ask them to read their cards. Mary is widely traveled and a popular choice for story nights. And Calico, which is a possum, she, her pronouns. A lost soul trying to find her way. Calico has been traveling with Roost for a few years. She was born deaf and communicates with sign language and by writing notes. She is unsure of her future and what her calling is. In the meantime, Calico creates wonderful little glass companions that keep the wearer safe. It has a special book. You can buy specialty books called The Breeze and the Brambles for 20 coins. And that's an example of the details they give you on the towns. So we're not going to get too deep into it, but we know two things coming in. We know that they've just returned from wherever they are, so everyone is there. It's going to be super busy. We know that the fire is going. I've already established that Lou has never been here before. So we can't say he knows these people already. What do we want to do as just a little vignette, keeping in mind that I need to wrap this up? I'll start with a description of how it's busy at the port, but you guys can sort of chew on the details of the town there. It was nearing dinner time when he rounded the bend and saw the town of Roost. One could hardly miss it. Its shore was stacked, was cluttered with 50 boats and rafts. At least. The town itself was a strange sight. It had no buildings as such. Jumpstore said, how about teepees? They were easy for the nomadic lifestyle. Indeed. It had no buildings as such. Instead, it was a cluster of tents. Many were a simple design where hides were wrapped about leaning logs. But others were brightly colored and as long as a longhouse. I like the idea of the puffing smoke. Most billowed with a gray smoke. But the center of town was where the largest fire was burning. It was around that grand flame that much of the visitors seemed to gather. It took Lou a moment to find a place to moor, but he did find a stump a bit south of Roost. That could hold his boat. It was a bushwhacking trek to get back up to Roost, but all the prime mooring spots were taken. When he finally emerged, from the brush, he was greeted by a tall, lanky heron who was eyeing some silver fish in the rushes. Oh my, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't spook off your dinner, Lou said. What was her name? Their name, rather? Mary. The great long yellow beak of the tall bird turned towards him and said, "Ah, but I am just watching, for I am full." A soothing thing for me to do. You are new. Who are you? Well, I'm Looper, but most call me Lou. And I guide a bookstore on a boat as of late. Lou said. The tall bird grinned at this and said, "I'm Mary, and it's nice to see a fellow as kind-eyed as you has inherited that old boat friend of this river. You know it. Do you know who owns it? I just found it one day. He said, I do. But don't worry. They would like you carrying it on. They said mysteriously. Then slowly stepped from the rushes and said, follow me, for the story times in Roost start soon. And so Lou followed. Catching sight of animal folk perched up on abutments. It's not, I didn't think that was right. Abutments, there we go. Perched up on abutments of rock along the shore to get a view of a stage near the fire. Lou was brought close to the warmth. A grace given to the elderly, he would learn. Then left by the bird, who took their place on the stage and began the story and began to relay the legacy of the floating bookstore. I think I'm missing a message from you, Zombie Wolf, because I see the one that says, I'm going to do my trivia now, and then the next one I have from you says, non-lethal poisons have been proposed. So that feels like it was half of another message. Maybe try resending it? And yeah, it does seem like, yeah, anyways. It does seem like we may have lost some people, but that's okay. We went particularly long today. I'm going to pause the story there, and we can pick up with it in the next season. Which means that it's time to read it back. Uncle Kitty says, YouTube or Chrome keeps crashing. You know, honestly, of the two, it's probably Chrome. Chrome is, it could be better, but they just don't make it better. If you're coming to this part of the stream, it's because you just want to know what we came up with as a story. And what we did was we played along with a character that we had invented actually in a previous stream. Doesn't really matter though. Which is a little old fox, a red fox with gray fur, named Looper Canid III, but also goes by Lou. We had originally done his story, started his story in Brisk, which is this game's version of winter, but this one we set in Bloom. So basically where we're picking up the story is the first day of Bloom, which is sort of its spring, where the water starts to thaw. And we just cover those first few days after having spent all of Brisk locked in by the frozen river. And I think that's all you really need to know as we get into the story, which was a little longer than usual. Looper looked on through the steam of his morning tea to the young crew of rats that were sawing holes into the softening ice. It was truly the thaw of bloom now, a transition from the still of brisk to the thick smoke of burn. Looper was undecided if he would partake in the ceremonies for which the young rats were preparing. The rinse, it was called, was a baptism of sorts, where the water was said to take from you your regrets and mistakes. In theory, it was a lovely ceremony, but in practice, Lou was an old fox with joints that ached even in a brisk wind, let alone the slush of a thawing river. So Lou was pondering over his cup of black tea whether the memories were worth the momentary misery of novel things. Either way, whether from the shore or in the slush, Lou would join the rinse celebrations. He was sure of that. He had enjoyed his time here in Thistledown, but he was ready to leave the town awash in his wake and head down the river to sell books at a place called Roost, a town he'd only heard of but never visited. A town that reportedly disappears at points in the year? You would have to ask about that. Today, however, was his last day in Thistledown, and it met up with Rinse, this ceremony. So he was going to spend the Rinse Festival in Thistledown. A swim in slushy water, followed up by an evening at the fire with warm drinks and a community of friends. That was the gist of it. Lou was enjoying the return of warmer breezes that morning, but off over the verdant canopy he could see gray clouds were stretching closer and closer, and so he figured the afternoon would bring some showers. But the morning was a swirl of chilly river mist and warming spring air off the distant ocean, which he found pleasant after it being cold for so long. "Ayo, Mr. Kalia, you going to take a dip with the rest of us?" asked a young rat. Mitchell was his name. Or maybe it wasn't. Lou was never too confident in his ability to recall names. "Oh, I don't know about that, son," Lou said with a smile to cover his mumbling. I'm a bit old for the shock of the cold." "My ma says you're only as old as you think you are, Mr. Kalia," the rat that may be named Mitchell responded. "You should join the festivities." "Well, I do think I'm quite old," Lou said with a nervous grin, "but I'll consider it." Lou had not intended to consider it. For him, it would be enough to go to the living gazebo where the warm drinks were served and the fires were set. It was a lovely place to sit in any season, but during bloom, that gazebo was transcendent. It was woven of living vines and branches, mostly a great willow whose stump formed its center post. During bloom, the thin, winding tendrils of the old tree were dabbed with soft pink and violet buds. Their sweet scent was still held back as the frozen air warned them away from blooming. Nonetheless, to sit in that gazebo at the shores of Thistledown must come see the cross stitches of a bright season peeking through, like a promise. So that's where Lou found himself by the afternoon. Under its dense dense canopy also kept that afternoon's showers, mostly off his fuzzy gray head. A drop would wiggle through here and there, but compared to those stripping down to nothing and sprinting towards the Icy River, he was well comfortable. There, on a spongy seat of moss, Lou sipped the warm cider and watched the young ones screech and laugh as they jumped into the cold water. Lou was settled in, a little buzzed, and mostly happy to watch the goings-on, but Mitchell startled him from this trance. He had sidled up and brought a drink over from the table where the great iridescent rooster named Jackson was spooning out the ciders, one from a bowl for the kids and one from a bowl for the adults. "Oh, you didn't have to bring me a drink," Lou said. "I'm not that old." Mitchell took a seat beside him and said, "You said you were old." "I know you're not." Lou had not intended to drink more cider, but since it was Mitchell, and he knew it could only be the juice for the kids, and juice was always lovely, he partook. Mitchell and Lou spent the next 30 to 40 minutes talking and drinking cups of lovely cider. And it was somewhere near the end of this conversation when Lou was wondering why the boy hadn't jumped in yet. It's a bad formation of a sentence. It was somewhere near the end of the conversation that Lou learned an important detail. It came to him as he stood, feeling the need for the washroom, and found that the ground was much more unstable than when he'd first come. One could say he was staggering over it, like a younger man returning from a well-supplied feast. Mitchell, Lou finally asked, noticing his tongue was lazy in his mouth, exactly what kind of cider did you drink? I told Jackson to give me one for a kid, that's me, and one for the adult, that's you, Mitchell smiled naively. Oh, Lou said, realizing what he had done. It definitely explained why he found himself better company to the boy than usual. Lou was a fox who, as his mother said, behaved more as a mouse. However, with the right imbibement, Lou was known to be almost fun to be around. Still, he didn't want to lose face with the young rat, and so said, well, maybe you should go do some jumping and swimming now, boy, son. Mitchell? I can't, Mitchell said, not correcting Lou on his name and confirming that Lou must have gotten it right. However, Lou could not shake the suspicion the boy was just being nice, and he'd still gotten the name wrong. Finally, the blurry thoughts of the old fox returned to the words of the pale little rat that wiggled its pink nose in a bit of a sniffle at saying them. He wondered what the boy meant. He thought he had wondered that to himself, by the way, but it turns out he'd mumbled it quite out loud. The boy responded, well, I'm a bit scared. And don't tell anyone, they'll just call me a coward. Then, with unusual bravado, Lou began a speech that composed more words than he normally spoke in a day. My boy Mitchell. He paused and examined the boy's face, then continued with a slur. Courage is not a resource for the bold. Courage is the thing that you get when you do the thing that you don't have the... Lou had to pause and ponder what he was actually trying to say. Finally, he said, no one is courageous if they aren't afraid. The difference is you do it. That's courage. He felt good about the phrasing, but he was also feeling good about almost anything by that point. And in that bluster of that oddly heroic feeling, Lou unbuttoned his nice wool vest, tossed it aside, and said, come on, boy, we'll do it together. Mitchell's eyes grew wide with shock as he watched the old gray fox run, or stumble more so, as he dropped his pants mid-stride to toss them aside, then leapt with a hoot and a dive into one of the carved holes in that slushy, freezing cold ice. The rest of the night was therefore Lou spent trying to shake the shiver that his swim had brought to his old bones. Mitchell did follow him, though. They also managed to spike the punch with river water when they came out and gave their fur a shake in an ill-chosen place near the gazebo, something that was met with disgust, but also some laughter. The next morning, around dawn, Mitchell and a few others helped the groggy old fellow unmoor his boat and catch the stream towards Roost. It would be a few days' journey to the town. The first day brought the revenge of Brisk in the form of pelting hail. The rattle of it on the skylight was a tambourine in the ears of the hungover fox, a reminder that yes, in some ways, age was not just in the mind. By the evening, the dark clouds had slipped away and the winds became warm and thick with sweet pollen. Lou took this opportunity to do some fishing as his boat coasted down the wide river. It only took a couple of hours for him to get a snag on his old fishing rod. It was a heavy fish with a lot of fight. Lou's arms were those of a bookseller who mostly lifted tea, so he nearly lost the whole rod to the fight, but he found enough spark to get it onto his deck. It was a great big pale river gulper. He could tell by its long whiskers and translucent scales. Its belly reminded him of a sphinx cat who used to buy his thistleweed baubles to keep her kittens entertained. She wasn't exactly a friendly cat, and her commonly furrowed brow revealed that, but he still remembered her loyalty to her litter fondly. She truly loved her kittens, and he was happy to see his baubles destroyed by them. The second day on the river, Lou started the morning with some reheated gulper from the night's dinner and a bit of tea. There was no winterly vengeance that day. It was as pure a day of bloom as had been so far. The sky was an unbroken palette of blue framed by chirping canopies over either side of the river. The bugs were finding their foothold on the waterways again with this warm weather, and that drew up the fish to the surface. So of course, Lou spent the day fishing again. Despite his optimism in the morning, he fished through to lunch and with nary a bite on his bait. The fish were out and snapping flies from the river's surface, but none found poor Lou's line appealing. Straight through to dinner was also a bust, and just for the sake of pride, Lou fished into the final moments of dusk before he finally got a bite. His first and only of the day. It was a glittering stream spinner, bright as a jewel in even the low evening light. Though it got away, it did remind Lou of a finely decorated choker his mother used to don for every outing, even when she first taught him how to swim not too far up the river from where he was. She never explained where it came from, but whenever he asked, she would touch it lightly and smile. It always made Lou warm in his heart to recall his mother's smile. The final day of Lou's journey to Roost was marked by passing showers, which proved enough of a deterrent that he stayed inside and ate biscuits while reading his books. It was nearing dinner when he rounded the bend and saw the town of Roost, finally. One could hardly miss it. Its shore was cluttered with 50 boats and rafts at least. The town itself was a strange sight, even without the crowd. It had no buildings as such. Instead, it was a cluster of tents. Many were a simple design, where hides were wrapped about leaning logs, but the others were brightly colored and as long as a longhouse. Most billowed with gray smoke, but the center of town was where the largest fire was burning. It was around that grand flame that much of the visitors seemed to gather. It took Lou a moment to find a place to moor, but he did find a stump a bit south of Roost that could hold his boat. It was a bushwhacking trek to get back up to Roost, but all the prime mooring spots were taken. When he finally emerged from the brush, he was greeted by a tall, lanky heron who was eyeing some silver fishes down in the rushes. "Oh, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't spook off your dinner," Lou said. The great, long yellow beak of the tall bird turned towards him and said, "Ah, but I am just watching, for I am full. A soothing thing for me to do. You are new. Who are you?" "Well, I'm Looper, but most call me Lou. And I guide a bookstore on a boat as of late," Lou said. The tall bird grinned at this and said, "I'm Mary, and it's nice to see a fellow as kind-eyed as you has inherited that old boat, friend of this river." "You know it? Do you know who owns it? I just found it one day," he said. "I do, but don't worry. They would like you carrying it on," they said mysteriously, then slowly stepped from the rushes and said, "Follow me, for the story times in Roost start soon." And so Lou followed, catching sight of the animal folk perched up on the abutments of rock along the shore to get a view of a stage near the fire, the big fire in the center of town. Lou was brought close to the warmth, a grace given to the elderly by the people of Roost, he would later learn, was then left by the bird, who took their place on the stage and began to relay the legacy of the floating bookstore. And that's as far as we made it. Tammy says, "Zombie, I have your trivia still on my chat. Maybe Rory just didn't read down far enough." No. It's probably a lot more likely that your chat hasn't refreshed and it got pulled. Wayne Wheeler decided to deter people from getting wasted on industrial alcohol. He got the government to let him poison the industrial alcohol. I see. it's because it's a grim subject, and I have a rather restringent auto moderator on, because, you know, obviously I can't afford another moderator. Witchery says, thanks for the stream, Rory. Well, thank you for coming, Witchery. Thank you, GS. And Zombie Wolf and Tammy and Jum Store. And Gosh, thank you for dropping by. And I may have to stop having to say individual greetings, because I feel like I keep forgetting people. But if hopefully I haven't. I obviously we went pretty long this time, but I've really enjoyed this game. I don't think there is any Tammy liked the character voices. Oh, you're welcome. I don't think there's really anything available for free with it right now, but I mean, the fact of the matter is we still only really seen half the game. Like I said, I haven't even really talked about how book selling and stuff works. If you are the kind of person like me who is a complete nerd for writing, who just will sit alone and play a game to write stuff, I think this is one of the best. It's really up there. It has a lot of mechanics, but meaningful mechanics. Like, one of the problems that I have with some games I've chosen not to play on the stream is they have a lot of mechanics, but they don't really do much. Right? Like, it's like a lot of calculation and rolling of dice and stuff, but it never really leads you anywhere. Whereas I feel like everything they include in this book is a prompt. You catch a fish, and there's a prompt associated with it. You go to a town, and it gives you some idea of the details of that town, so you can react to it and write out from there. And that's the kind of stuff you want in these sort of solo tabletop RPGs. I wouldn't say there is no book that does anything like this. There was the one that we did a little bit of in August that was based around Kiki's Delivery Service, unofficially, which I think also had a lot of depth in a similar feel. I just personally like the world of being a little fox on a floating bookshop more. Yeah, Ghost says, you need the mechanics so you don't get lost mid-story. That's pretty good. Yeah. You know, obviously, I do want to say that obviously writing an actual story, which I still do off stream. I still have a bunch of stuff, just none of them have been good enough to publish at this point over the last year. But I still write off stream. That's a different experience, right? Like, I'm writing... It's more boring, I will say, at least. But in this experience where you're just sort of floating through ideas and responding to prompts, which is what solo tabletop RPGs are about, the structure should be there to keep momentum and help you keep structure and make your world feel real, rather than bog you down in details. Kokoro, thank you, Witchery. Kokoro is the name of the one. That is also a good one if you like the sort of young witch fantasy that Kiki's Delivery Service offered. And Ghost says one can always ignore the mechanics when they get in the way, which is what we've done so far. But yeah, like, the fishing is fun. I don't know why it's fun. It's just drawing cards off a deck, but it's fun. It captures that moment well. Next time, I suspect when we come back to this, which will probably be in a couple of months, I guess we'd be going into the burning season. And maybe I'll do more to unravel the mystery of the floating bookshop. But at the very least, hopefully, I will finally show you how the book selling works. And yeah, people seem to like the system and thanking me for the stream. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in, of course. And I really appreciate it. And well, you know, when I usually say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get out of my bookshop.